Good afternoon, everybody. Migration from Islamic countries in Europe has become a major problem. The emergence of parallel societies, major cultural problems at schools, and problems with the increasing violence against women and also in general. And of course, not just since October 7th, we have observed an increase in Jew hatred in Europe, in our main capitals and everywhere. In Europe, political Islam has become a very serious problem. The goal of this lecture is to provide knowledge of the basic Islamic teachings, which enables us to perceive their impact on politics and society and to respond accordingly. If we go in the debate about Islam, the people always say, but Islam is not Islam. There are many different branches. Yes, of course. The main part of the Islamic community belongs to the Sunnis. Here you can see the law schools of the Sunni Islam. Here you can see the law schools of the Shiite Islam. But now we go to the very foundation of Islam. The very foundation of Islam is the Islamic creed. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. If you speak this in Arabic in front of two Islamic testimonies, you are converted to Islam. But for us, non-Muslims, it shows us the only two authorities in Islam, for Islam. And this is Allah, and everything about Allah we find in the Quran. And less known is the texts about Muhammad, his sunnah, his biography, the seerah, and the traditions, the hadith. What you see here is the whole amount of texts of Islam. If you reduce the Quran with all the doubles, it's 14% of the teachings of Islam is the Quran. 68% are the texts about Muhammad. The seerah, the biography of Ibn Ishaq, was written 150 to 200 years after Muhammad's death. It's 800 pages. I request you to read it because it's enlightening if you know Muhammad's life. And the hadiths are 700,000 little stories about every deed, everything what Muhammad did from everyday's life up to waging war. And 7,000 from these stories about Muhammad are declared as sahih, as reliable. And of course, for our research, we use the collections which are reliable. I want just to mention some of them: Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and Sahih Abu Dawud. So that's mainly the collections we use for the research. Unique in these texts is that more than half of these texts are dealing with the non-Muslims. How the non-Muslims, the so-called kafir, should be treated according to the Islamic teachings. So 51% of the Islamic texts are dealing with the non-Muslims, and this is the part which is for us political. So we are debating this topic on a political level, and we are speaking about political Islam. Let's turn to the Quran. From the Islamic point of view, it's complete, perfect, and immutable for all times. I don't know who of you already have read the Quran. If you read it, then you will see the surahs, they are not in chronological order. They are ordered lengthwise, as you can see on the graph here. The surahs given in Mecca and the surahs given in Medina, and how they are, the order of the chapters at the bottom. That's why there is missing the context. To understand the context of the surahs in the Quran, you need to understand Muhammad's life. There are missing the instructions. So everybody knows the 5 pillars of Islam: how to pray, how to fast, how to do the pilgrimage to Mecca, how to pay the jizya, the zakat, the tax. So to know how to do that, you need the texts about Muhammad. You will not find the instructions in the Quran. And in the Quran, you find a lot of contradicting messages. I will come to that later, because this is we call it dualism in Quran and in Muhammad's life. But there is a key to understand all this. It's 89 surahs telling us that Muhammad is the best role model for everybody. There has certainly been for you in the Messenger of Allah an excellent pattern for anyone. Don't worry, I will only give you one example, not 89. But just to understand, Muhammad is the one who gives us a detailed interpretation of the Quran. Also, the legal sources in Islam by priority is Allah and Muhammad, the Quran and Muhammad's Sunnah. All the Islamic authorities, if they decide something, at the end, they turn to Quran and Sunnah of Muhammad to make their decisions. It's the legal priority, the legal source by priority. According to the Islamic teachings, all prophets, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and even Jesus, who is called Isa in the Quran, they were all Islamic and preaching Islam. And that's how the allegations of falsified texts against the Jews and Christians came up. But those who wronged changed those words to a statement other than that which had been said to them. So we sent down upon those who wronged the punishment from the sky because they were defiantly disobedient. Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. He's the last in the row. He brought back everything to Islam. What he said is valid for eternity. A short example from the curriculum of Islamic religious education in Austria. If you find Muhammad, you find 27 points. So he's for everyday's life exemplary. He's an exemplary human being. And in this topic circle, the students once again deal intensively with the history of the Prophet as a special role model figure and discuss different phases of his life. Let's go into the life of Muhammad. Nevertheless, there is no archaeological and no historical proof if Muhammad existed or not. But as he is exemplary for the whole mankind, we go in the texts now. Everything what you see in the next few slides, it's according to the primarily Islamic texts, Quran and Sunnah of Muhammad. And to make it easier for you, I will give you an overview. Keep in mind these three periods of Muhammad's life. When he was born in Mecca and when he grew up, and after his migration, his Islamic hijrah from Mecca to Medina, when he became a politician, we can say, and the third period of his life, the conquest of Mecca until his death. Keep it in mind. And now a brief summary of Muhammad's life. Muhammad, according to the Islamic texts, Muhammad was born 570 in Mecca. Mecca was a polytheistic environment. There were very few Jews and Christians. It was polytheistic. The biggest tribe was the Quraysh, and they worshipped three gods. Muhammad grew up as an orphan with his uncle Abu Talib and became a businessman. And that's how he met Khadija, and it was Khadija, a successful businesswoman who proposed him the marriage. That's how Muhammad became wealthy and influential. In that time, the first surahs, visions, were sent down by Angel Jibril, and Muhammad started to preach the faith to one God, and with that he got problems in Mecca because Mecca was polytheistic. After the death of his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, Abu Talib, he was a Quraysh, but he was a bit like a mediator in between the Meccans and Muhammad. When those two died, the problems were increasing and it got worse for Muhammad. In that time it was said that he married the 6-year-old Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr, the later Caliph. And in this time also the story was sent down that Muhammad flew at night on a flying horse to Jerusalem, and he had insight in heaven and hell. And I mention that because this story has great significance again today. Why? Because among other things, it describes Islam's claim to ownership of Jerusalem. In this time, the satanic verses were sent down in the Sirah, it is explained what it means. Muhammad always was thinking of ways how to persuade the Meccans to accept Islam. It came to him that the three gods of the Quraysh could intercede with Allah. The Meccans, they liked this possibility, and it came even to some common worship around the Kaaba. But later, Muhammad said that he received these surahs by Satan. So there was no bridge between Islam and the religion of the Meccans anymore. And it came at the end to the Islamic migration, to the Islamic hijrah from Mecca to Medina. This is the beginning of the Islamic calendar, not the revelation of the first surahs, not his birth. It was the Islamic migration from Mecca to Medina, and that's how Muhammad changed. In the first 13 years, he persuaded 150 people, and then Muhammad became a politician, a lawmaker, and in a very short time period, he conquered the environment where he lived. And he became a politician and a jihadi, and his strategy and tactics changed. What happened in Medina? Medina was very different to Mecca. The first thing was what Muhammad did, he built up the first mosque. And the mosque also served military purposes. He consummated the marriage with Aisha when she was 9, he was 53. And maybe you are familiar with the narrative that Islam only wages war in defense. You have heard of that, I guess. This goes back to this period in Medina, because the Meccans did not accept Muhammad. They did not accept him as a prophet. And not accepting, not submitting under Muhammad and Allah is, according to the Islamic texts, it's a crime. So it was possible for Muhammad to start the raids on the trade caravans. It came to the very famous Battle of Badr, 624. Nevertheless, the Islamic armies were a minority. They won this battle. And how important, these are like time markers. These events are very important. This shows, for example, that in Afghanistan there is a special force called Badr 313. Medina was very different to Mecca. There were many Jews. More than half of the population was Jewish. There were three big Jewish tribes, Banu Kanuka, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza. And we cannot go in detail now, but in this time, and this time of the Medinan Quran reveals all the texts of Jew hatred, which are still important today, and especially today they are important. So the Jews did neither accept Muhammad as prophet, nor did they support him in the raids against the other Arab tribes. So this was the reason why one after the other tribe was besieged and expelled. And we can't do that today because we don't have the time, but we should study these processes of the expulsions closely because they are still considered exemplary today. Muhammad signed the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, which was a settlement for a truce. And this treaty, Al-Hudaybiyah, established Islam's attitude about treaties to this day. Political Islam makes a treaty if and only if it is in a weak position. The treaty is good as long as political Islam is weak. We have one example. Yasser Arafat justified the Oslo Treaty in the 90s with this Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. Many Jews fled from Mecca and Medina in the direction of Syria, and they stayed at the Jewish oasis of Kaiba. Please remember the word Kaiba, because Kaiba is the synonym over the victory over the Jews. I don't know how it is here, but in Europe we hear this war shout, Kaiba, Kaiba, O Jew, Muhammad's army will come back. We hear it a lot on the manifestations for Palestine. And this goes back to this story, the synonym for the victory over the Jews. And if you see on the right hand, you can see Ishak 747. This is always the quote. You can go in the Sirah of Ibn Ishak and read in the chapter 747 and the following how it took place. Just a short summation. The leader was killed, a Jew was tortured on Muhammad's order to tell the location of a Jewish treasure. Then he was beheaded. Muhammad took Safiya, the widow of the Jew, and married her. I just want to stop here for a moment because according to the Islamic teachings, Kafir women, non-Islamic women, are seen as spoils of war. And Safiya, she was a Jewish woman, she was the spoil of war, and she belonged to a follower of Muhammad. And he heard that she was really beautiful, so he bought her for some slaves, and then he married her. So first he killed brother, husband, father, and family in jihad, and later he married her. And why did the followers see that she was his wife and he married her? She could have been a sex slave as well, but she had to wear a veil. And the veil is the distinguishing mark of Islamic women, Muhammad's women, and Kafir women, who are considered as sexually available. In Kaiba, Muhammad installed the first dhimmis. Dhimmis, maybe you have heard this term, dhimmis are second-class citizens or semi-slaves, and in Kaiba it was the Jews. They worked the land and gave half of the income each year to Muhammad. They could still be Jews, but they gave up all their power. This shows Islamic tolerance of other religions. And later the tool to have dhimmis is one of the most important tools for the spread of political Islam, which we will see in the history. Muhammad conquered Mecca 2 years after he signed the 10-year Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, and all the idols around the Kaaba were destroyed, and those who resisted were killed. There is a whole list in Ibn Ishaq 810. There were slaves girls who had sung satirical songs against Muhammad, a transcriber, and others. And in this time, the Islamic warriors, they asked themselves what to do with the captured women, because they asked Muhammad, can we have sexual intercourse with them? Because they are married in their own cultures, and adultery is a big sin according to the Islamic teachings. So that was the reason why in this time, and you see here there are several surahs in the Quran and many hadiths which allow that captured women can be raped. Kafir women are spoils of war. Later, Muhammad sent warriors. Khalid ibn al-Walid, you can look at it, it's the sword of Allah, to conquest, and he commanded in this, they reached more Christian regions, and that's why in this time the Surah 929 was sent down, the submission of the Christians and the Jews. Fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which has been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger. This is a link to the Islamic law, to the Sharia. Nor acknowledge the religion of the truth, Islam, even if they are of the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. I give you another quote from the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, chapter 973. In a 9-year period, Muhammad personally took part in 27 raids. There were 38 other battles and expeditions. This is a total of 65 armed events, not including assassinations and executions, for an average one armed event every 6 weeks. When Muhammad died, he said, this is the Hadith al-Bukhari. If you see the quotes like that, you look in volume 4, book 52, Hadith 288. Muhammad said there should be no religion in Arabia except Islam, and that money should continue to be paid to influence the kafir ambassadors from abroad, the non-Islamic ambassadors from abroad. This refers to the jihad of the money, and maybe you are familiar that the vice president of the European Parliament, not long ago, she got a lot of money from Qatar and Morocco to make it easier to get a visa. So, and I will give you another quote. This is a quote of Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, 1928 in Egypt. He said, "When they tell you there is politics, tell them that this is Islam and we do not know the separation of religion and politics." Yeah, Islam is a hybrid society system with religion, with ethics, with law, with politics, with everything. And we, non-Muslims, we can go into debate on a political level, and that's what is very helpful because we don't want to harm any spiritual feelings of anybody. This shows Islamic colonialization. North Africa was Christian. Parts of Arabian was Christian, Iran was Zoroastrian, Afghanistan was Buddhist, Pakistan was Hinduist. A characteristic of political Islam is that earlier civilizations are being displaced. And it continued for 1,400 years. There's Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali, the four right-guided caliphs. Under Abu Bakr, there were the Ridda Wars. Many people wanted to leave Islam because Muhammad died. But I'm sure that you know there is the death penalty for apostasy. So this was executed a lot in this time. That's why political Islam could spread. And then there are the caliphs of the Umayyads, the Abbasids, and the caliphs of the Ottomans until 1924. And I will show you how it continues. According to the Islamic teaching, the whole world belongs to the Islamic Ummah, to the Islamic community. Political Islam outlines the concept of territory separation. Countries under Islamic rule are called Dar al-Islam or Houseland of Islam, and countries that are not under Islamic rule are called Dar al-Harb or Houseland of War, according to the Sharia code. They are also called Land of the Enemy. This is not a country with borders or a state. These are regions where political Islam has taken the power. I'm sure that you have heard that in Europe we are dealing with no-go areas or zones sensibles in Paris. Yeah? We have these areas where the police doesn't enter anymore. And these are regions where political Islam has taken over all the power, and from these centers, political Islam is increasing and spreading. This is a demographic map. Usually we do not point to the people, we do not point mainly to individuals, but demography is a tool of political Islam. And why I show this map here is because we are in an institute which is dealing with national security, and it shows the centers of the crisis of the world. It shows North Africa, Somalia, Ethiopia, the Middle East, Armenia, Kashmir, the Balkan states. You can see that if we do not study the Islamic textbook, we will never achieve to find solution for the center of the crisis in the whole world. That's why I wanted to show this map. Let's go into the principles of the Islamic ethics according to the textbook, according to the Islamic basic, primarily texts. The goal of political Islam is submission. Islam means submission under Muhammad and Allah. It is He who has sent His messenger with guidance and the religion of the truth to proclaim it over all religion, even so the pagans may detest it. There is a strategy for that. It's waging jihad and implementing step by step the Sharia, the Islamic law. The second caliph after Muhammad's death established the Treaty of Umar, Shurut Umar. This means Jews and Christians under Islamic rule have to pay the jizya tax, are not allowed to build new monasteries and churches, have always to give food and accommodations for Muslims, are not allowed to manifest their religion in public, have to wear recognizable clothing, are not allowed to carry weapons, they are not allowed to possess weapons, do not sell alcohol, no criticism of Muhammad. My colleague will take over this important topic. There is a prohibition to teach the Quran to non-Islamic children. The homes of non-Muslims must not be higher than the homes of Muslims. Dhimmis are not allowed to ride on horses, only on donkeys. This is an institutionalized discrimination of non-Muslims, which is leading to the step-by-step conversion. And according to the strengths of political Islam in the region, the discrimination was higher or not so high. Let's go into the history. 10 years after Muhammad's death, Egypt was conquered by Islam. 10,000 people conquered Egypt. It was a late antique society of 1 million people there. And of course, at the beginning, the discrimination was not so high. And this is what in our school textbooks sometimes they describe it as the golden age of Islam, the peaceful living together, coexistence. But if you go a little bit deeper in that, if you do research on that, then you will see that it was the dhimmis who were living under Islamic rule, and that the discrimination was increasing as soon as political Islam has gained power. Also, in the Holy Land, in Israel, it was a Christian population under Islamic rule. The Christians, 1,000 past Christ, there was Al-Hakim, the Caliph Al-Hakim. The Christians could not longer visit the holy places. They were subjected to constant looting, kidnapping with ransom payments, and Caliph Al-Hakim, he destroyed 30,000 churches, and it was a really bad Christian persecution until Emperor Alexius Comnenus issued a call for help to Rome, and the European Christians have come to the aid of the Oriental Christians. We all know that this was the beginning of the Crusades in 1099, and for 200 years they could stabilize this country, and then it fell. Listen to Middle East Media Research Institute. They translate speeches of Islamic leaders, and this is a sheikh in Israel in June 2019.
من كل الكفار نحن حين نحكم بالإسلام لم يبقى في قوانيننا ذرة من قانون من غير الإسلام. ليس هذا فقط، ولن نسمح لغير مسلم أن يحكم المسلمين. الشيء أينما وصل المسلمون للحكم يا أحبابنا بأي طريق يصلون لن يسمحوا لكافر أن يحكم المسلمين بعد ذلك. فيش عندنا تعدد بين الإسلام وكفر، إحنا في عندنا إسلام.
This map shows 548 military jihad battles against the classic civilizations of Rome and Greece. In this time it was violent jihad, and political Islam was always pushed back with war, of course. Now, at the beginning of the 20th century, political Islam did not enter non-Islamic countries with violent jihad anymore. That's why also the response, the resistance has to be ideologically. Like Thomas Jefferson did it. It was Thomas Jefferson who was a diplomatic representative of America in Paris at that time. He was not yet president. And he was able to stop piracy in the Mediterranean Sea. He wondered why piracy did not stop. Even so, America was spending 20% of the state income as protection taxes. So he met the Islamic ambassador in Tripoli, who informed him that the Quran commands fighting against the Kafirs, against the non-Muslims. And that's why Thomas Jefferson studied the Quran. This Quran of Thomas Jefferson still exists in the US, I don't know where, with a preface, wonderful preface of Thomas Jefferson. And this is considered to be the founding moment of the US Navy as we know it today. Piracy was stopped in the two Barbary Wars. I already mentioned at the beginning of the 20th century, political Islam was weak. It was not a danger anymore. The West could resist. But if you study political Islam's textbook, you will see that there are other strategy and tactics to enter non-Islamic countries. And one of these tactics is Islamic migration, which we are confronted with in Europe a lot, and also trade, for example. And it is a matter of priority once political Islam enters a kafir country to establish the political infrastructure. This is important because Islamic organizations become the authority on knowledge and define the strategy and tactics of subverting the existing kafir constitutional order. I will show here the growth of Islamic organizations in Germany. Why does it grow so quickly in the last decades? Because there is no resistance. Nobody knows how to handle it. The seat of the political Islamic power centers are the mosques. Muhammad's life outlines these functions. The function of a mosque, according to these papers, is a court for trials, verdicts, and legal decrees, a place to carry out legal sentence, also such as stoning, a place for family law, a place to receive foreign diplomats, a war chamber, and weapons are also permitted in a mosque. So the next video, now we have a little problem because, no, it's also in English here. So this is a recent video from Israel now. Maybe you can look if we can get the sound.
למסגד בקומת מרתף, מחסן, אמל"ח ומעבדה של רקטות של החמאס ומלא מלא מטענים אפשר לראות פה את כל סוגי מרגמות והרקטות השונות, מרומים שונים מכל מיני סוגים.
Now we come to the Kafirs. There are more than 300 references to the Kafir in the Quran. Kafirs are those who conceal the truth. Kafirs are the non-Muslims, and it's not a neutral term. Indeed, the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah are those who have disbelieved and they will not ever believe. Cursed, wherever they are found, they shall be seized and murdered. Kafirs, according to the Quran, can be mocked. Kafirs are hated, can be terrorized, can be beheaded, can be plotted against. Kafirs must not be befriended. There are certain surahs pointing that out. Kafirs are evil, can be humiliated, can be cursed, and can be persecuted. This is the doctrine. There is a strategy for the spread of political Islam. It's jihad. Jihad means struggle, effort. Every single deed in daily life can be used for jihad. And Muhammad's biography outlines that. As you see here, 2/3 of Muhammad's biography is about jihad. If you go to dialogue events, I don't know if this exists here as it exists in Europe, but if you go there, then you will hear the greater jihad, the inner spiritual jihad, to get up in the morning quickly and to be nice to the children and things like that. It's the spiritual jihad. And the statistical analysis of the Hadith al-Bukhari said that it's 2%, and the lesser jihad, which is in the case the violent jihad against the non-Muslims, it's 98%. But these terms are not according to the primarily doctrine. They were the first time they appeared in the 11th century, and they were mainly used for Sufism. But I mention it because it's used so much. But according to the Islamic texts, there is the jihad of the pen and the word, so treaties, school books, articles, jihad of the money. Unluckily, we can't go into that in depth, but it's a very important topic. Jihad of the sword, of the violence, and also Islamic migration is jihad according to the texts. There is a motivation for jihad, for the hijrah. Believers who participate in jihad increase their rank. Those who fight with their wealth and their lives for Allah's cause. The reward for jihad. The participation in jihad means the direct path to paradise, and all the previous bad deeds are erased. So those who immigrated or were evicted from their homes, this is the narrative of being evicted. Why? Because the whole world belongs to the Islamic Ummah. Or were harmed in my cause, or fought, or were killed, I will surely remove from them their misdeeds, and so on, and they get a big reward in heaven. Jihad is the most important deed, and you did not kill them, but it was Allah who killed them, and you did not slew, O Muhammad, when you slew, but it was Allah who slew. Fighting is prescribed for you, and you dislike it, but it is possible that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you love a thing which is bad for you. These two surahs show something very important. There is no free will, no decision of the own conscience in the Islamic teachings. There is the principle of al-wala wal-bara. Everything what Allah likes is good, and everything what Allah dislikes is bad. That's it. And we have to learn how jihad is applied in our societies, and it's exactly according to Muhammad's life. When political Islam is weak, it's the same than in the Meccan period. When it gains power, it's in the Medinan period, and when it has the upper hand, it's the conquest of Mecca. Let's go into that a bit. When political Islam is weak, we listen to the message of the peace. For you is your religion, and for me is my religion. Those of you who have attended dialogue events know this surah, but we know from the seerah, from Muhammad's biography, that while Muhammad gained for tolerance for Islam in the public, behind closed doors, he promises his followers already the dominion over the others, and Arab tribes and non-Arabs. There is a big difference if you go to a dialogue event in the parish or in the diocese, or if you go in a hidden mosque in Vienna. So you will listen to both of that. This is applied. Jihad in the media. This is the leader of an Islamic community. He attaches great importance to mercy towards all human beings, the absolute justice, the equality of woman and man, the separation of religion and state, an end to violence against in the name of religion, and to human rights as laid down in the Quran. That's exactly what we want to hear, and we get it. It's an announced in the newspaper. School classes are invited in mosques. And you can always look the name of the mosque. This mosque is called Fatih Mosque, and Fatih was the conqueror of Constantinople in 1453. And there is a kebab stand in Berlin, in Germany, at the station, which is called Fatih Servet, which means something like luck to the conqueror. We did an analysis of the school textbooks, and this is a school textbook for 12-year-old children, a history book for 12-year-old children in Austria, a recent one. Muhammad began to preach. He proclaimed that all men were equal, that the slaves had to be freed, and that one had to share his wealth with the poor. With this, he made enemies, and he had to immigrate from Mecca in 622. Finally, he gained so many followers that he could return to Mecca. After his death, Islam continued to spread. Why does it happen like that? Because this is not an Islamic school book. This is a school book which was written by Kafirs, non-Islamic people. But As I said, the matter of priority is to establish the Islamic authority in the country, and if we non-Muslims want to know something, we turn to this authority. We should not turn to the authorities, we should turn to the primarily texts, to the textbook, because then we could understand what happens. In the second period of jihad, Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina, and you already know what happened. So slay them wherever you find them, drive them out from the places whence they drove you out, for persecution is worse than slaughter. We have to learn the language of political Islam, because there are similar terms but other definitions. And for example, persecution, according to the Islamic teachings, is the secular society order or Christianity. This would be Islamic oppression of Islamic teachings. In this phase, there is an emphasis on the victim rule. The politicians are influenced a lot. This is called Dawah, the invitation to Islam, demands for halal prayer rooms and times, and the activity against Islamophobia. My colleague will go into that a little bit more. That's happened in Vienna. This is the function of a mosque. Of course, it was everybody was shocked about these pictures, but it is the function of a mosque, to educate the children how history, war, everything. And when political Islam has the upper hand, we know that what happens, it's Afghanistan, Pakistan, and a really good example is 1979, the revolution in Iran. Then, when the sacred months have passed, slay the idolaters wherever you find them, and take them captive and besiege them and prepare for them each ambush. They fight in the cause of Allah, so they kill and are killed. And you who have believed, fight those adjacent to you of the disbelievers, and let them find in you harshness. Yeah, there are many surahs, I can't give you a lot, but if you want more, go in the self-studies. These figures are a rough estimate of deaths of kafirs by the political act of jihad found in Quran, Sirah, and Hadith in 1,400 years. When Muhammad conquered from Medina, Mecca, around the Kaaba there were 360 idols, and all these idols were destroyed. And the destruction of pre-Islamic culture or of non-Islamic culture is doctrine in the political Islamic teachings. Also, the previous cultures are destroyed. Go to do your own research about that. I already spoke about the contradiction in Quran and also in the life of Muhammad. It's like an ethical dualism, and this makes it very difficult for us to understand the doctrine. There is, for you is your religion, and for me is my religion, and accursed wherever they are found, being seized and massacred completely. So what is true? Both is true. Both is Islamic doctrine, both can be applied. And of course, depending on the power of political Islam in a region, one verse or the other applies. And Quran solved this problem by itself. There is the law of abrogation. So the later verse, the Medinan verse, counts more or is more important than the earlier verse. That's called the law of abrogation, which is difficult to evaluate because the surahs are not ordered chronologically. Maybe you are familiar that deception is allowed for the spread of political Islam. In the Islamic teachings, there are a lot of words for deception. There is the taqiyya, al-marid, and also kitman. Kitman is putting away one part of a surah. This surah 532 is very famous. Whoever kills a human being killed all men, and whoever keeps it alive, it is as if he keeps all men alive. This surah is the headline of a declaration against violence and terror in Austria, which was signed by 300 imams. This surah is part of the Abu Dhabi Declaration, who is familiar with this declaration? It's the declaration of fraternity of Pope Francis with the chief of the Al-Azhar University, Al-Tayeb in Egypt. And it's also part of this declaration. And the pictures you see here, this is the act of violent jihad in November 2020 in Austria and Vienna. And it was in the Jewish district. So behind there are the Jerusalem stairs, and it's very close to the synagogue. And now we all together, we open the Quran and we read. For this reason, we have prescribed for the children of Israel. So this surah is directed to the Jews, and it's a quote of the Talmud. Whoever kills a human being without committing murder or causing mischief on the earth, it is as he had killed all men, and so on. Our messengers have already come to them with clear proofs. So the Jews were already invited to Islam. Dawah was ongoing. They had clear proofs. But thereafter, many of them have truly remained on the earth without measure. They did not submit under Muhammad and Allah. That's why it came to the next surah. But the reward of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and strive to do mischief in the earth is that they may all be killed or crucified, or have their hands and feet cut off in turn, or be banished from the land. This is a disgrace from them in this world, and in the hereafter there is for them a mighty punishment. It's a loud deception. Muhammad said, war is deception. The hypocrites wish to deceive Allah, but He will deceive them. And they schemed, and Allah is the best of schemers. As I already mentioned, we have to learn the definition of the same words. We have a lot of same words, but it's not the same definition of the word. Justice. What does justice mean according to the Islamic teachings? It means that the Sharia is completely applied. Dignity, freedom, and peace can only be under the rule of Islam. The Free Syrian Army is the Free Islamic Army. Democracy has a lot to do with demography. Human rights, my colleague will go into that. Freedom of religion, what does it mean? It's the freedom to live Islam. It has nothing to do with leaving Islam or with changing the religion. Oppression, tyranny, and terror, this is the secular social order. Victim, only Muslims can be a victim. A non-Muslim is per se a perpetrator. Even if he is a little baby or an old woman, not accepting Islam is being a perpetrator, is a crime. Charity, we can't open this topic here because charity in all the Islamic documents, beginning from the Quran and everything else, it's all, zakat is also used for the cause of Allah, which is jihad. It's a huge topic of Islamic financing. And I want to show you some misleading terms which are used a lot in Europe. Moderate Islam, radical Islam. We had a whole group who wanted to establish the Euro-Islam, Islamism, fundamentalist Islam, and many people say it's according to the interpretation. Yes, and we define it political, we define the part of the texts which are dealing with the non-Muslims, and we are talking about this topic on a political level. I just want to point to this topic. I won't go into that now, but Christians who believe that Jesus is God are disbelievers. But those who insist that Christ is God and part of the Trinity and who reject the true faith will be punished in hell. Do your own research, go into the homepage of Open Doors. There are more than 365 million Christians in 50 predominantly Islamic countries persecuted at the moment. These are the very newest dates. I will not go into the topic of women. I just want to show that non-Islamic women, kafir women, are seen as spoils of war. And this is one of the biggest justice and media scandals in Great Britain. In Rotherham alone, 1,400 Kafir girls from the age of 11 were systematically subjected to gang rape by Islamic perpetrators. In Germany, we have 2 gang rapes caused by Islamic perpetrators. In Austria, it's increasing. We have the term femicide now. So go and do your own research. We do not point to the motives of the perpetrators. We connect it with the ideology of political Islam. The proportion of Jew hatred, I already mentioned, it is in Medina, where the high percentage of Jewish population was. It's more than in Hitler's Mein Kampf. This is a quote from the Hadith, which is also in the founding charter of the Hamas. The messenger of Allah said, "The last hour will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews, and the Muslims shall kill them all. And if a Jew hides behind a stone or a tree, the stone or the tree will say aloud, 'O Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him.'" Remember Kaiba, the war shout. That's what happened in Vienna in 2021 and ongoing from the 7th of October in our streets. And I will finish with this conference in Norway, and then I have a very last slide.
Because every now and then, every time we have a conference, every time we invite a speaker, they always can come with the same accusations. This speaker supports death penalty for homosexuals. This speaker supports death penalty for this crime or that. He is homophobic. They subjugate women, etc., etc., etc. It's the same old stuff coming all the time. And we always try to tell them, I always try to tell them that, look, it's not that speaker that we're inviting who has these extreme radical views, as you say. These are general views that every Muslim actually has. Every Muslim believes in these things. Just because they're not telling you about it, or just because they're not out there in the media, doesn't mean they don't believe in them. So I will ask you, everyone in the room, how many of you are normal Muslims? You're not extremists, you're not radical, just normal Sunni Muslims. Please raise your hands. Everybody, mashallah, subhanallah. Okay, take down your hands again. How many of you agree that the punishments described in the Quran and the Sunnah, whether it is death, whether it is stoning for adultery, whatever it is, if it is from Allah and His Messenger, that is the best punishment ever possible for humankind, and that is what we should apply in the world. Who agrees with that? Allahu Akbar. Are you all the radical extremists? Subhanallah.
So our wishful thinking is the modernization of Islam, which was tried for many times in the 1,400 years. But why wasn't it successful? What do you think? It's the authorities. The authority in Islam is Muhammad and Allah, and are the books, are the texts. This is the opening of a Friday ceremony. The best speech is the book of Allah, and the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad, and the most evil thing is to renew it, and any renewal in religion is misguidance, and every misguidance leads to hellfire. Education is the only long-term protection. There are several books written by Dr. Bill Warner, who studied and analyzed the primarily Islamic texts. They can help you to go into self-study, but of course we suggest to go into the primarily texts, go into Quran, go into the Sunnah, and do your own research and make your own conclusions. Thank you very much.